She went for a routine checkup and ended up in a contract marriage with a millionaire. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The summer sun poured through the glass walls of Westbridge Medical Center, a soft shimmer dancing across the white floors. Dr. Noah Valencia tightened her ponytail as she reviewed the morning schedule. It was supposed to be an ordinary day routine checkups, prenatal consultations, the quiet hum of the maternity ward she had come to love. At exactly 11:45, her next patient's name flashed across the tablet screen, Cedric Hollander. The name alone made her pause. She had seen it in headlines, pharmaceutical giant expands to Europe, billionaire CEO donates to medical research. But she assumed it was a coincidence. Surely, a man like that would not walk into her modest clinic room for a simple checkup. She was wrong. When the door opened, the man who stepped in was tall, precise in every movement, his silver wristwatch catching the sunlight. His voice carried calm authority. "Dr. Valencia, thank you for seeing me." He sat down, his suit far too formal for a medical visit, yet somehow it fit him. What began as a normal consultation shifted when an assistant burst in, pale and trembling. "Doctor, there has been a system error in the lab. 2 DNA samples were switched." Noah's stomach dropped. The name on the report, the one that had been paired with Cedric Hollander's, was hers. Within hours, rumors spread through the hospital corridors, the young doctor and the billionaire. By sunset, gossip had evolved into headlines. Doctor implicated in billionaire's secret baby scandal. She stood before the board of ethics the next morning, her voice steady but heart-racing. "I did nothing wrong. It was a clerical mistake." Yet they suspended her pending investigation. 2 days later, Cedric appeared at the hospital again. The summer light outside turned golden, glinting off his car as he stepped out. Noah was leaving the building with a cardboard box of her belongings. Their eyes met hers, clouded with disbelief, his unreadable. "Dr. Valencia," he began, his tone low but unwavering. "This situation has damaged both our reputations. I have a solution." She frowned. "A legal statement?" He shook his head slowly. "A marriage. Temporary, contractual, and public enough to silence the press." Noah blinked, speechless. The heat of the afternoon pressed against the glass windows, cicadas humming in the distance. "You cannot be serious," she whispered. Cedric set a folder on the nearest table, the pages crisp, his pen waiting. 6 months. You keep your license. I clear my name. When it ends, you are free." The air between them thickened, and for a moment, all she could hear was the faint echo of children laughing outside the hospital garden. She had spent her life fighting to save others' futures, never imagining she would have to trade her own to survive a rumor. He met her eyes, his voice softening just slightly. "Think of it as a contract, Dr. Valencia." The clock ticked once, then again. Somewhere beyond the window, the world continued bright, loud, and indifferent. But inside that quiet room filled with sunlight and scandal, a choice was being written into both of their lives. That summer, the day a doctor walked in for a routine checkup became the day destiny handed her a proposal no woman could have foreseen. The next morning, the heat shimmered across the parking lot as Noah stood outside the Hollander corporate tower. The glass building glowed against the summer sky, reflecting clouds like silver wings. In her hand, she clutched the folder Cedric had given her, the marriage contract that still felt like a trap. She told herself she would return it unsigned. She would end this absurd idea before it consumed her career. But when the elevator opened onto the top floor, her resolve began to crack. Cedric was there, already waiting behind a wide desk that looked out over the city skyline. No jacket this time, sleeves rolled up, a pen poised between his fingers. The air conditioner hummed softly, but the room still carried the warmth of the season. "I assume you read the terms," he said without looking up. "I did," No replied, keeping her voice firm. "And I came to say no." Cedric finally met her eyes. "I thought you might. That is why I made a few adjustments." He turned the contract around so she could see. Clause number 5. Upon conclusion, Hollander Foundation will sponsor your research project on maternal health. Full funding. Complete independence. Her breath caught. It was the dream she had postponed for years. Still, she shook her head. "You cannot buy my integrity." "This is not about purchase," he said calmly. It is about protection, yours and mine." Silence filled the room. The clock ticked once, then again. She thought of the online headlines still multiplying by the hour, of the phone calls she had stopped answering. Her reputation was bleeding out faster than truth could heal it. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet. "What happens after 6 months?" Cedric closed the pen, his expression unreadable. "You go back to your life. I go back to mine." The words should have been simple, yet as he extended the pen toward her, the air between them changed something unspoken, weightier than ink or law. The next scene unfolded like a blur. A private ceremony at a courthouse by the bay. Only 2 witnesses, his lawyer and a notary. No flowers, no vows, just signatures echoing in a sunlit room. When it was over, Cedric turned to her with a faint, polite smile. "Welcome to your new life, Mrs. Hollander." The words landed heavy. Outside, the heat was unbearable. Waves of sunlight rolled over the pavement as their car pulled away from the courthouse. Hours later, they arrived at his coastal estate, a mansion overlooking the Pacific, its white walls gleaming against the afternoon light. Noah stepped out, shielding her eyes from the brightness. The air smelled of salt and roses. Inside, everything was silent. Marble floors, high ceilings. Art that probably cost more than her entire education. A housekeeper greeted her with a small bow and led her up a staircase to a sunlit room. "This will be your suite, ma'am." Noah hesitated at the word, "ma'am." It felt wrong, borrowed, like a costume that did not fit. When she turned, Cedric was standing in the doorway. "Dinner is at 7, he said simply. "You do not need to attend if you prefer privacy." She studied him for a moment, the clean lines of his face, the control in every gesture. "You planned all of this," she murmured. "I plan everything," he replied, and then he was gone. That evening, the sky blazed orange over the ocean. Noah sat alone on the balcony outside her room, watching the light fade over the water. Somewhere below, a piano played a slow melody that carried through the halls. She looked down at the gold band on her finger smooth. Perfect, unreal. 6 months, she reminded herself. 6 months of pretending. But even as she whispered it, the summer air felt too quiet, as if the house itself was listening. In that stillness, Noah understood something she had not before. This was not just a contract. It was a storm waiting to break, and she was standing in the heart of it. The first week of marriage passed in measured silence. The ocean breeze drifted through the open corridors of the Hollander estate, carrying the scent of salt and sun-warmed stone. Every morning, Cedric left early for meetings in the city. Every evening, he returned precisely at 7, his schedule as precise as his speech. Noah spent her days wandering the edges of that world half-guest, half-ghost. The housekeeper, Mrs. Lowe, had shown her the library, the terrace garden, and the small study facing the sea. She tried to read, but the words blurred against the hum of her own thoughts. At dinner, they spoke little. The table was long enough for 10 people, yet only 2 sat there. The soft clinking of silverware filled the pauses between them. One evening, Cedric looked up from his meal. "You are not eating," he observed. "I am fine," she said quietly. He set down his fork. "You do not have to pretend here, Dr. Valencia. This arrangement may be formal, but it should not feel like imprisonment." Her gaze lifted to his, uncertain. "Then what should it feel like, Mr. Hollander?" He leaned back, eyes thoughtful. "Like control. We both lost it once. This is how we reclaim it." The words stayed with her long after he left the room. Later that night, unable to sleep, Noah walked along the terrace. The waves shimmered under the moonlight. In the reflection of the glass, she saw her own face, tired, questioning, caught between roles she never asked to play. The following morning, Cedric's driver appeared at her door. "Mr. Hollander requested your presence at the office." The city heat pressed against her as the car wove through traffic. When they arrived, she was led into the boardroom on the top floor. Every eye turned toward her. Whispers followed. Cedric entered moments later, calm and unreadable. "Everyone, this is Mrs. Hollander," he said evenly. "My wife." The word landed like a stone in water. Noah managed a polite nod, though her heart was pounding. The meeting went on numbers, projections, medical innovations. She caught fragments about the foundation funding rural clinics, the same work she had always dreamed of. During a short break, one of the executives approached her. "Dr. Valencia, or should I say Mrs. Hollander, I read your papers on maternal care. Impressive." The respect in his tone startled her. For the first time since the scandal, someone saw her not as a rumor, but as a professional. She glanced toward Cedric. He was speaking with another board member, but when their eyes met, he gave the faintest nod as if to say, "You see? This is what protection looks like." That evening, back at the estate, Noah stood by the balcony again. The sunset burned gold across the horizon. Cedric joined her, 2 glasses of water in hand instead of wine. "You handled yourself well today," he said. "I did not expect to be part of your meetings. I wanted them to see who you are, not the story they read online." "Ardo." She turned toward him, searching for sarcasm, but there was none, only quiet sincerity beneath the formality. "Thank you," she said at last. He nodded, and for the first time, the silence between them did not feel heavy. It felt like an understanding, fragile but real. Over the next few days, Noah found herself drawn into Cedric's world. She joined him at charity events, sat beside him during interviews, and learned to smile under camera flashes. At first, it was pure performance, a necessary show for the public eye. But then something shifted. One afternoon, while reviewing proposals for the Hollander Foundation, Cedric paused beside her desk. "You annotated every report," he said, almost surprised. "I wanted to help," she replied. "If this foundation is in my name too, it should do something good." For a moment, he said nothing. Then, quietly, "You remind me why I started it." "Ka." The comment was simple, yet it lingered long after he left the room. That night, as she walked through the dim hallway toward her suite, Noah realized how much had changed. The contract still hung between them like a border, but inside that boundary, life had begun to take shape. And for the first time since the scandal, she felt seen not as a mistake, not as a pawn, but as a person. Still, beneath the calm surface, something else stirred. Trust was growing, but so was the danger of what trust could turn into. Summer rolled on, filling the air with the hum of cicadas and the faint rhythm of the tide below the cliffs. Weeks had passed since the courthouse wedding, and the arrangement between Noah and Cedric had settled into an odd routine calm on the surface, quietly complicated beneath. Every morning, Noah joined Cedric for breakfast on the terrace overlooking the sea. The table was always precise: coffee, fruit, and the newspaper folded to the business section. He read in silence while she sipped her coffee, but sometimes his eyes drifted toward her, studying the way sunlight touched her hair. One warm Friday, he broke the stillness. "We have an event tomorrow," he said, closing the paper. "A summer charity gala for the Hollander Foundation. It will be our first major appearance together." She looked up. "Do I have to speak?" "Only if you wish to," he replied. "But your presence matters more than any speech. The board and the press will be there. They need to see that we are stable." "Stable?" she repeated, half amused, half nervous. "That is one way to describe us." He almost smiled. "You will have a gown delivered this evening. A stylist will assist you tomorrow." The next day, the estate buzzed with preparation. Stylists moved like a quiet storm through her room, pinning her hair, smoothing silk across her shoulders. By the time they were done, Noah barely recognized the reflection staring back from the mirror, a woman poised, graceful, wearing confidence like armor. When Cedric entered to escort her, even he seemed momentarily caught off guard. His usual composure faltered as his eyes lingered for a second too long. "You look." He stopped, then added softly, "Perfect for the occasion." Lokonga. The gala was held in a glass pavilion by the coast. Inside, strings of lights reflected off crystal glasses and silver trays. As they entered, cameras flashed. The noise was overwhelming at first, but Cedric's hand steadied at her back, guiding her through the crowd. "Just breathe," he murmured. "Let them see what they want to see." Noah nodded, exhaling slowly. They greeted donors, posed for photos, and answered polite questions. For the first hour, everything unfolded as planned, until a reporter from a gossip column stepped forward. "Dr. Valencia," she began with a rehearsed smile, "some say this marriage was arranged to protect Mr. Hollander's image. How do you respond?" Noah froze for half a second, then lifted her chin. The entire room seemed to wait. "If a man stands by me when the world turns against me, I would call that loyalty, not arrangement." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut glass. Then, slowly, applause broke out near the back of the room. Cedric's gaze found hers steady, approving. For a moment, the cameras disappeared. It was just the two of them, standing side by side beneath the warm glow of the summer lights. Later, as the event ended and the guests filtered out, Cedric approached her near the balcony. The ocean wind swept through the open doors, carrying music from the string quartet inside. "You handled that perfectly," he said. "I told the truth," she answered quietly. He looked at her for a long time, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. "You are far more composed than most people in my world. I underestimated that." Their eyes met. Something unspoken lingered between them, a tension neither wanted to name. Back at the estate that night, Noah walked barefoot across the marble hallway, her heels dangling from her fingers. The echo of the gala still lingered in her ears, the flash of cameras, the scent of champagne. She paused at the doorway of the study when she saw Cedric inside, removing his tie and pouring a glass of water. "You were incredible tonight," he said, his voice softer than usual. "Thank you," she replied. "I only did what needed to be done." He hesitated, then asked, "Does it bother you? Pretending for the cameras?" She shook her head slowly. "Not as much as it used to. Sometimes pretending helps me forget what was taken from me." He set down his glass. "You mean your reputation?" She met his gaze. "I mean my faith in people." The honesty in her voice hit something in him. For the first time, Cedric seemed unsure of what to say. The silence stretched, heavy but strangely gentle. Finally, he spoke. "You should not lose faith because of what others did. You have done nothing wrong." Noah turned toward the window. The moonlight spilled across her bare shoulders. "I wish I could believe that," she whispered. Cedric moved closer. Not enough to touch, just enough for his voice to reach her ear. "Then let me prove it." For a heartbeat, the world stood still. The sound of the waves outside filled the space between them. Then, as if sensing the weight of what could happen next, Cedric stepped back, his composure returning. "Good night, Noah." She watched him leave, the echo of his footsteps fading down the hall. Her heart beat faster than it should have. She tried to steady her breathing, reminding herself that this was still a contract, still a performance. But when she looked down at her hands, they were trembling. Not from fear, but from the sudden, impossible thought that the line between real and pretend was already starting to blur. Outside, the ocean whispered beneath the summer sky, and the mansion seemed to breathe with it, holding a secret neither of them was ready to admit. The days that followed the gala felt quieter, almost suspended in the glow of what had happened. For the first time, the house did not feel like a cage. It felt like somewhere to breathe. Each morning, Cedric and Noah crossed paths in the kitchen, a small shift from their formal dining routine. He made coffee strong, unsweetened, and she added sugar to hers, stirring in silence until he caught her smiling at his expression. "You think I ruin it, do you not?" she teased. "I think you make it tolerable," he answered, surprising them both. By mid-July, the foundation's work consumed their schedules. They spent long afternoons reviewing medical proposals and grant applications for clinics across the state. The professional partnership built between them started to blur into something gentler, more human. One humid afternoon, Cedric suggested a site visit to a rural hospital funded by the foundation. The drive took 3 hours through golden fields and small towns. Noah sat in the passenger seat, wind from the open window sweeping through her hair. For the first time since the scandal, she laughed freely. Cedric glanced at her, momentarily distracted. "It suits you," he said. "What does?" Smiling without fear. She looked away, her heart unsteady. At the hospital, the staff greeted them warmly. Noah immediately engaged with the nurses and patients, moving through the wards with quiet confidence. Cedric observed her from a distance, how she comforted a mother with a premature infant, how her eyes softened when she spoke to a teenage volunteer. That evening, as they walked back to the car, the sky turned orange over the wheat fields. Noah stopped, her shoes crunching against the gravel. "You are not the man I expected you to be," she said. Cedric turned toward her. "And what did you expect?" "A cold businessman who sees people as numbers. But today I saw someone who listens." He smiled faintly. "Perhaps you are changing me. Or perhaps you are letting me see who you already were," she replied. The drive back was quiet, filled with the hum of the tires on the road and the faint scent of her perfume. When they reached the estate, Cedric walked her to the door. For a moment, neither moved. The air was thick with the warmth of summer, and something heavier they dared not name. "Good night, Noah," he said finally. "Good night, Cedric." Her voice trembled slightly on his name. Over the next week, the distance between them seemed to vanish in small, unnoticed ways. He began leaving notes beside her morning coffee, short reminders about meetings, sometimes a quiet line of gratitude. She found herself waiting for them, though she never said so aloud. But peace, as always, was temporary. One evening, while they were having dinner on the terrace, Cedric's phone buzzed relentlessly. His expression hardened. "The board is calling an emergency meeting," he said. "About what?" He hesitated. "An internal audit. Someone leaked financial statements suggesting the foundation is funneling funds improperly." His stomach dropped. "That is not true, is it?" "Of course not," he said, his tone sharp but calm. "But perception matters more than truth right now." As he rose from the table, the sunset painted his face in shades of amber and shadow. "Do not worry," he said. "I will handle it." She watched him leave, her unease growing. The same media that had once twisted their lives could easily do it again. Later that night, Noah stood by her window, watching the distant glow of Cedric's office lights still burning. Somewhere below, the waves whispered, steady and indifferent. The summer had begun with a contract written in ink. But now, something else bound them together, something invisible, fragile, and real. And though she did not know it yet, that quiet peace was about to be shattered by the very world they had both tried so hard to control. The next few days carried a different kind of heat, one that had nothing to do with the weather. News outlets began to whisper about the audit inside Hollander Biotech, speculating that charity funds were being misused. The scandal spread faster than Cedric could contain it. His advisors worked around the clock, and the phone never stopped ringing. Noah watched him from a distance, the calm precision that once defined him now replaced by tension that crackled in the air. Every night, she found him still awake in the study, sleeves rolled up, surrounded by papers and unanswered calls. One night she stepped into the doorway. "You have not eaten," she said softly. He did not look up. "I will later." "You said that yesterday," she reminded him. He sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I cannot stop until I know who leaked it. Someone from inside is feeding information to the press." She hesitated before walking closer. "You trust too many people with too much access." His eyes lifted to hers. "Do you include yourself in that statement, Dr. Valencia?" The words stung, sharp and cold. She took a step back. "You think I would betray you?" "I do not know what to think anymore," he said quietly. "This house used to be predictable. Now everything feels compromised." For a long moment neither spoke. The sound of the ocean filled the silence. Then Cedric said, softer this time, "I did not mean that the way it sounded." But the damage lingered. Noah turned away, her voice barely steady. "Maybe this is why people do not mix business and emotion, Mr. Hollander." He flinched at the distance in her tone. The following morning, the headlines grew worse. Anonymous sources claimed that Noah had used her position as Cedric's wife to influence medical grant approvals. It was a lie, but it spread quickly. Reporters camped outside the gates, their microphones reaching like claws through the iron fence. Noah tried to stay calm, but the humiliation cut deep. Every article twisted her name, every photo of them together labeled her as the opportunist. That evening, Cedric came home earlier than usual. He found her in the garden, standing barefoot on the stone path, the wind tugging at her dress. "You saw the papers," he said. She nodded without turning. "Do you believe them?" He walked closer. "No, but the board does. They want to suspend you from the foundation until the audit is cleared." "Lofu." Noah turned then, her voice rising. "Suspend me? I have done nothing wrong." "I know that," he said, his tone calm but firm. "But perception. I am tired of that word," she interrupted. "Perception ruined my career once already. I thought marrying you would end it. Instead, it started again." Cedric's expression hardened. "You married me to save your name. I married you to save mine. We both knew the rules." Her heart twisted at the truth of it. "I did not expect it to feel this way," she whispered. "Neither did I," he admitted, his voice breaking for the first time. The air between them trembled with everything they could not say. Then, before either could speak again, the security guard appeared at the gate, holding a letter. "It is from the board," he said. "An emergency summons." Cedric opened it, reading in silence. His jaw tightened. "They are calling for a public statement tomorrow morning. They want me to appear alone." Hokwa'u. Noah felt the words like a blow. "So they want to erase me." He looked at her, torn between duty and something far deeper. "They think it will calm the investors." "And what do you think?" she asked. His answer came after a long pause. "I think it will destroy everything we have tried to protect." That night, Noah lay awake, listening to the waves crash against the rocks below the cliffs. Somewhere across the hall, Cedric's footsteps echoed faintly, pacing, restless. The summer air had grown heavy with unspoken fear. The contract that had once promised protection now felt like a cage closing around them both. And yet, beneath all the tension, she could feel it, something real struggling to survive, fragile but alive, waiting for one final test to decide whether it would endure or break apart completely. Morning arrived with a heavy sky. The ocean outside the estate looked pale and restless, mirroring the unease that filled every corner of the Hollander mansion. The public statement was scheduled for noon. Cameras were already gathering at the corporate headquarters, and news anchors repeated Cedric's name every hour. Noah stood by the window of her suite, watching the reporters set up along the distant gates. The gold band on her finger felt heavier than ever. What had once been a contract now looked like a weapon the world could use against them both. When Cedric entered the room, he was dressed in a dark suit, his expression unreadable. "The car will be ready in 20 minutes, he said. "You are going alone," she answered quietly. "Yes, that is what they requested." She turned to face him fully. "And you will just let them erase me? Let them believe the lie?" He hesitated. "If I speak now, the investors could pull out. Thousands of employees could lose their jobs. I have to think of the company." Noah's voice trembled. "And I was supposed to think of my reputation when I signed your contract. Now I am asking you to think of my name once." He looked at her for a long moment, then spoke softly. "Noah, if this destroys us, I will not be able to undo it." "Then maybe it is time to stop protecting the lie," she said. "Maybe the truth is the only thing left worth saving." The silence stretched between them, full of everything they had not said. Finally, he turned and left the room without another word. By the time Cedric reached the downtown tower, the crowd had doubled. Reporters shouted questions as he walked inside, flashes bursting like lightning. On the top floor, the boardroom waited cold, bright, full of judgment. His cousin, Evelyn, sat at the head of the table. "Cedric, the shareholders are demanding clarity. The easiest way to resolve this is to announce that the marriage was purely contractual, that Dr. Valencia was never involved in company affairs." He stared at her. "That is not the truth." "It does not have to be," she said smoothly. "It just has to sound right." Cedric glanced out the window toward the ocean miles away. He could almost hear Noah's voice from that morning. Quiet but steady, "Maybe the truth is the only thing left worth saving." He rose from his chair. "Prepare the press room," he said. "I will handle this myself." At noon, the cameras went live. Dozens of microphones faced him, their red lights blinking. Cedric stepped up to the podium. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. "There has been speculation about the integrity of the Hollander Foundation, and about my marriage," he began. "I will address both today." He paused, meeting the sea of cameras head-on. "Dr. Noah Valencia is not part of any corruption. The rumors about her influence are false. She has worked tirelessly to support causes this foundation has long neglected. If there is anyone to blame for mistakes and oversight, it is me." A wave of murmurs swept through the room. Cedric continued, his voice stronger now. "Our marriage began as a contract, yes. But somewhere in the middle of all this noise, I realized something. Paper can define a partnership, but it cannot define love." The room fell silent. Outside the building, the wind shifted, carrying his words across the city. Back at the estate, Noah stood frozen in front of the television, tears gathering in her eyes. He had done what she never expected. He had risked everything, not for control but for her. When the broadcast ended, Cedric's phone began to ring. He ignored it. His lawyer tried to stop him at the door, but Cedric kept walking, leaving the building and the chaos behind. That evening, as the sun dipped low over the Pacific, his car pulled into the long driveway of the estate. He stepped out slowly, exhausted but unbroken. Noah was waiting by the garden, the summer breeze catching her hair. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she whispered, "You told them the truth." "I had to," he said simply. For once, it felt right. The light of the setting sun fell between them, soft and golden. It felt like the first real breath of peace after months of storms. But the world was still watching, and the consequences of that decision had only begun to unfold. That evening, the air over the coast was heavy with the smell of salt and summer rain. The estate, once silent with restraint, seemed to breathe again after the storm of truth Cedric had unleashed. Reporters crowded at the gates, lights flashing through the iron bars, but inside the house, everything was still. Cedric stood by the balcony of his study, his tie undone, the weight of what he had done settling over him. The truth was out. The board would likely vote against him, investors might withdraw, and his career, the empire he had built, could begin to crumble. But for the first time in years, he felt something close to peace. He heard footsteps behind him. Noah stood in the doorway, wearing a light dress the color of cream, her hair falling loosely over her shoulders. The exhaustion in her face matched his own. I saw the press conference, she said quietly. You could have lied. It would have been easier. I have spent most of my life choosing what is easier, he replied. It never made me proud. She walked closer, the floor creaking softly beneath her bare feet. You may lose everything, she said. Cedric turned to face her fully. Then I lose it knowing I finally did something right. For a moment neither spoke. The silence between them was not distance anymore, it was recognition. Two people stripped of image, stripped of pride, left only with the truth. Noah's eyes glistened. You did not have to protect me. I did not do it to protect you, he said, voice low and certain. I did it because I could not stand watching you be punished for my decisions. And because somewhere along the way, pretending stopped feeling like pretending. Her breath caught. Cedric. He took one step closer. When we signed that contract, I told myself it was business. But every day since, it became something I could not control. The sound of thunder rolled in the distance, soft but steady. Noah's voice trembled. And what are we now, without the contract? Cedric's hand brushed hers, tentative but real. Free, he said simply. Free to decide what this is. Take. For the first time since the summer began, Noah allowed herself to smile. Not the polite smile for cameras, but something unguarded and full of warmth. They stood like that for a long time, the world outside humming with chaos, but inside, everything was quiet. Later that night, Cedric received the call he had been expecting. Evelyn's voice was cold on the other end. The board voted. You are being removed as acting chairman effective immediately. I understand, he said. You threw away your entire career for that woman. No, Cedric replied calmly. I threw away a lie. Then he ended the call. When he turned, Noah was in the doorway again, holding 2 cups of tea. Bad news? He smiled faintly. Expected news. She placed a cup beside him. You can rebuild. You always do. Not alone, he said softly. Outside, rain began to fall, washing the last of the summer heat from the air. They stood by the window, watching the droplets trail down the glass. I never thought losing everything could feel this peaceful, Cedric murmured. That is because you did not lose everything, Noah said. You found the truth. He looked at her then, the woman who had entered his life by mistake, who had stood through scandal and silence, who had become his anchor in the storm. In that moment, no words were needed. The paper that once bound them had burned away, leaving only what could not be written. Trust, forgiveness, and a beginning born out of ruin. The rain softened to a whisper, and the night outside settled into calm. It was no longer about the contract. It was about what came after the quiet, honest space where love had finally learned how to breathe. The storm passed, leaving behind clear skies and the clean scent of the ocean. The headlines that had once screamed accusations slowly faded, replaced by stories of corporate change and quiet redemption. Hollander Biotech appointed new leadership, and Cedric withdrew from the public eye, choosing silence over spectacle. Weeks turned into months. The summer warmth gave way to a softer light, and the estate by the sea began to feel less like a fortress and more like home. The world had moved on, but inside those sunlit walls, 2 people were still learning what it meant to begin again. Noah returned to her work at the community hospital, not as a doctor in hiding, but as one rebuilding her purpose. Patients greeted her with warmth rather than suspicion. Her name, once a headline, became a story of perseverance. Every evening when her shift ended, she drove back along the coastal road to the same house where Cedric waited. He spent his days quietly, helping restructure the Hollander Foundation from behind the scenes, channeling its resources into programs that saved lives rather than protected reputations. One evening in late August, the sunset stretched wide across the ocean, painting the sky gold. Noah parked the car and stepped into the garden, where Cedric was kneeling among rows of bright yellow flowers. She smiled when she saw what he was planting: sunflowers, their faces already turning toward the last light of day. I thought these only bloomed in early summer, she said. They do, he replied, brushing soil from his hands. But I wanted them here year-round, a reminder that the light always returns. She walked closer, her voice gentle. You sound like a man who finally believes that. He looked up at her, the corners of his mouth lifting. Maybe I do. Or maybe someone taught me. Lo. They stood side by side, the evening breeze soft against their faces. The quiet between them was no longer the fragile silence of strangers. It was the steady calm of 2 people who had survived the storm together. After a moment, Cedric reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Noah froze as he opened it, revealing a simple gold ring, not the one from the contract, but something new. unmarked by ink or obligation. This time, he said, his voice steady, there is no clause, no expiration date, just a promise. Stay with me, not because you have to, but because you want to. Noah's eyes filled with tears. She nodded slowly, her smile trembling through the emotion. Yes, she whispered, for real this time. He slipped the ring onto her finger. The sun dipped below the horizon, leaving behind a soft glow that wrapped around them like a benediction. Later, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the sea, the lights of the town flickered in the distance. Noah leaned against his shoulder and said quietly, "Do you ever think about how it started?" "Every day," Cedric said. "A routine checkup, a mistake, a contract, and somehow, everything that mattered grew out of it." She smiled. "That summer changed everything." He looked down at her, his voice a whisper. "That summer ended a contract and began forever." Yet, the camera of memory would fade on the two of them standing together under the endless sky, the sea whispering below, and the first stars of the evening breaking through, reminding anyone listening that sometimes love does not begin perfectly. It begins honestly, in the ruins of misunderstanding, and grows into something true.